Now, Lowcountry Forever, a public affairs presentation of the Charleston Radio Group.
Lowcountry Forever today, we're talking about Raising the Volume. It's a program that the Charleston Gaillard Center kicked off almost 2 years ago, and now it's Volume 3. I am Brian Cleary. The folks who are behind this amazing program that the Gaillard Center has put on, artist-in-resident Marcus Amaker. He is, of course, Charleston's Poet Laureate, and also Charlton Singleton, the Grammy Award winner, who is the artist-in-resident emeritus. And I need to start with this gentleman because, Marcus, the rumors are, of course, that you just went in there and kind of forced out Charlton and said, hey, old man, move aside. You got to go to the emeritus level. I'm the big dog now in town. Is that true?
That's pretty much how it is. I can speak on that. That's pretty much what happened. You know, he just sort of, up and said, hey, bro, you know, I love you and everything, but why don't you just go and sit in the chair over there, the old chair. That's what emeritus seems to mean, I think.
Time for the younger generation to take over.
Well,
exactly.
It seems that you guys have made up because you came together to create this amazing series called Raising the Volume. Marcus, let me start with you. If somebody just saw the title Raising the Volume, they may not know what it is that we're talking about. How would you describe this series?
For me, it is a chance for people in the community, viewers, and anyone who decides to tune in to learn a lot about a lot of people in the community that they might not know, but people who are doing really great things for folks in Charleston. It's also a chance for Charlton and I to use this platform to amplify some voices too. So I'm equally as excited about folks getting to know folks like Herb Frazier, who has been doing stuff in the city for a long time, as well as somebody like KJ Kearney, who I wouldn't say he's, necessarily new, but his voice is definitely on the rise. So it's a really great chance for us to use this Gaillard Center platform to turn up the volume on other people's voices, a little bit. And it's a really sort of clean interview. Like, it is a lot of fun to be able to do this and just have a conversation and let folks hear about people's lives and their careers. And hopefully it inspires other people to make change as well.
Charlton, you and Marcus did the first interview yourself. It was a conversation between the two of you. That was Volume 1. We're now up to Volume 22. When you did Volume 1, was there a thought that you would get and reach 22?
I don't know if it was a clear thought about how many volumes that we would get to, but I will say this, when Marcus and I were talking, the first volume, and just sort of talking about how the two of us, being young Black men in the community and navigating and being outspoken when we needed to and sharing some of our experiences and things, I think that's where some of the powers at the Gaillard Center were really willing to let us continue with some other people in mind. I think they enjoyed how the two of us interacted and our ability to interview each other, per se. And that sparked the flame about getting some other guests. And like Marcus said, it's just been a thrill for us to talk with some of these pillars in our community, both old and new, and to allow them to talk about some of the great initiatives and things that they have been doing or are in the process of doing or have thoughts about doing in the community to help everyone. It's just been fantastic. A lot of people think that it's all, pretty serious and everything. Marcus and I have had some great discussions. We go back to music quite a bit, a genuine love that we both share. And so it's just been a great series, and we're very thankful to the Gaillard for allowing us to do what we do.
Marcus, when you approach a guest, are they surprised that you have reached out to them? And has there been anybody who's like, no, I don't think this is for me?
So the first part of that question, people are genuinely surprised and happy to be a part of what we are building here, which is great. I have had a couple of people say that this wasn't the platform for them, and I respect that because, when you are really doing real work for the city. There's a lot that needs to happen. So I think being on a stage of a world-class venue might not be the avenue that some people might want to take, which is fine. I know that a lot of people would rather spend their time actually doing the work instead of talking about doing the work.
As someone scrolls down maybe on the Gaillard website and looks at the list of people that you've been able to encourage and have come on, Marcus, there are some names, say Dr. Thaddeus Bell, that jumps out that I think everybody would know. Some other names that I think people would have no idea who they are. Are these just folks that you happen to have some knowledge of, their role in the community and their role in what's happening these days, and that's how you kind of get those people involved in the program?
And that's been a fortunate side job, I guess, of being the poet laureate, is that I've been blessed to meet a whole bunch of people in the city. So even if I have just a passing awareness of what somebody does, it's really cool to be able to dig deeper into their story. So I know for me, I really try to focus on those folks that people might not know. I'm less interested in having a big time celebrity on there, and more interested in the person who could really use some volume on their voice. And that's what I feel blessed and privileged to be able to partner with the Gaillard on this.
Today on Lowcountry Forever, we're talking about the Charleston Gaillard Center Raising the Volume series. It's a series of conversations now up to volume 22, done by Marcus Amaker and Charlton Singleton. Now, Charlton, you've done a bunch of these interviews. Has there anything that's really come out that kind of surprised you?
I think with a lot of the guests that I have interviewed, most of them have been some of the what I call older hierarchy. There's a few younger ones in there, but it's always been a learning experience for me, because the way that I've been interviewing them, I would ask them about basically their life and some of the things that they have done leading up to the present. And in a lot of cases, there's always something that comes out that I didn't know about the person. Most of the people that I have interviewed, I have known as friends or colleagues. And so it has been eye-opening because when I would interview them, it would be like we were just sitting down having a conversation at the dinner table or in your living room. And one sentence or one thought could lead to another. Part of that is one of the magical things that happens. I'll give you an example. You mentioned Dr. Bell.
Yes.
Dr. Bell, for example, everyone knows him as Dr. Thaddeus John Bell with Closing the Gap. And some of people might know of him with his athleticism of being a sprinter and all of these world records that he's held and things like that. And he told me about how he tried out and actually made the team for the Washington Redskins one time, formerly Washington Redskins. Yeah. But I thought that was very interesting. Also, you find out a lot about, a lot of the information with the older guests that I've had to talk about them growing up in Charleston and how different it has been, or how different it was back then in a lot of different things, whether it's education, whether it's racial, whether it's business-wise. So there's always something new that comes up that I didn't know. And another thing that I'd like to add is that Sterling DeVries, that works at the Gaillard. She is over the education department, sort of arm of the Gaillard. Sterling watches the videos before they're released, and she is able to attach a lesson plan and send those out to schools. So in addition to the adults looking at this Raising the Volume, it also comes with a lesson plan. Certain things that are said, in the interview could then lead some of these students on a good path to go and check out, whether it was an event that happened or a place that one of the guests had been or something like that. So the educational part is extremely valuable as well.
And Charlton, I don't think people realize the educational arm and the educational focus that the Gaillard Center has. And now you're talking about these interviews now that come with a lesson plan. So if somebody's an English teacher in a North Charleston middle, high, elementary school, they can take that into the classroom. So the education has to be a huge part of why you're involved as well.
Exactly. And Marcus and I being artists in residence and emeritus, that is sort of our department. Prior to the pandemic, Marcus was going out to schools and doing little small residencies with schools. And it's really a blessing to have someone of Marcus's caliber to go out to schools. Principals and teachers will tell you that, they really want to get kids writing. They want to get kids using pen, and paper and putting their thoughts down and everything. And how Marcus gets them to do poems or short stories and things like that is just another feather in the cap for, anyone that's going to get him to come and talk and, have these activities with their students. So the educational arm of the Gaillard has been a huge focus and advantage for people in the school systems in the Tri-County area. So we always encourage everybody to look at all of the programs and camps and things that are offered.
And Marcus, have you been able to get back out in the schools yet, or is that something that's still maybe a few weeks or a few months down the road?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be in schools, probably 3 schools per week. I've been doing that fairly often, and I'm seeing more of a balance of the Zoom workshops as well as in-person stuff, and that is fuel for me. It's really inspiring to be in front of schools, and it's everyone from second graders all the way up to college students. I spoke at a senior living place the other day too, and doing some poetry there. But yeah, it's been wonderful. It's usually a lot of teachers that reach out to me wanting to do poetry workshops and getting their students to open up more. And I always find that writing is it's a healthy and it's a safe and it's a very creative way to express what's happening. And it might even just be funny poems, but also there's that space and a safe space to write about deeper emotional things as well. So yeah, I'm in schools often, and it's really, really wonderful for the Gaillard to support that work.
So Marcus, let's talk about Volume 3. You guys have added some new interviews, and folks can go on the Gaillard Center website to see these. They're also on the Facebook page. You can see them on YouTube as well. But talk a little bit about Volume 3 and who that we'll be seeing you talk to, and what is it that you took away from this series of interviews?
I spoke with a teacher, Tisha Smalls Brown, and Tisha I met at North Charleston High when I did a workshop there a few years ago. And what's kind of funny and on theme with all of this, we connected because I always talk about music when I'm in the classroom. So I talk about that more than poetry, really, to get them to start writing. But she is of the old school hip hop era. So we connected over that. And then she does a lot of great mindfulness work. She's really, really a big component for meditation and helping students realize the power in that as well. So we ended up starting to talk about classrooms and her work there, but it went to really the importance of being a mindful person in a society that doesn't really support us in doing that. Just how important it is to take some time for yourself, making sure that we are just being mindful with everything that we do. So I spoke to her. I know Charlton spoke to Lonnie Hamilton, Dr. Brown, and Kiana, I think, too, for this. So Charlton can speak about his episodes.
Yeah, I spoke with, longtime Charlestonian, Dr. Lonnie Hamilton, who was 93 at the time. He's 94 now, but still sharp as a tack. We talked about his career as an educator, as a local community politician. I spoke with Kiana Parler about her journey to becoming a Grammy award-winning musician and starting at a young age. Some of the people that she's worked with. I spoke with Mr. Michael Brown, who is a young man that is currently on North Charleston City Council, being someone that grew up in the neighborhood, went to the public schools here in the Charleston area, and is now one of the leaders in our area. And what's good about, all of them are fantastic. I especially liked talking with Michael because he's a young guy, and a lot of the students that will see these episodes can see that he is, a young man in his I think Mike is in his early 40s or whatever, but just being involved and using his voice and things like that. There's Dr. Brown, who also is a product of the Lowcountry and his journey to becoming an emergency room doctor. All of these people have interesting journeys and interesting stories to where they have gotten to. One of the best parts of hearing that is the fact that you can get young students to see these people, especially our young African-American students and kids out there, to see the people that are in their neighborhoods that look like them and that are doing great things. Also, just being entrepreneurs, just all of these things that are very positive. Sometimes it's not always the easiest road. It could be a rocky road, but the fact that they stuck with it and they maintained their path and everything, that's the volume, no pun intended, of raising the volume.
We're talking with Charlton Singleton, the Grammy Award winner, and also Marcus Amaker, Charleston's poet laureate. Charlton and Marcus are the voices behind and really the driving factor behind the Gaillards Raising the Volume Center, the conversations that they have. And Marcus, if somebody logs on, they go to the Gaillard Center website and they watch one or multiple volumes, what is it that you hope that they take away from these conversations you have?
I hope that they are encouraged to make change and do things in the community. I think what is important about what we do and what any sort of platform like this does is that it helps people to see the human behind the superhero kind of, so we are very, very honest in our talks as well. But I do hope that it's a little bit meta, for some folks. I hope that they see that and they go, wow, I can do this stuff too. It's not just these folks who have been around for a long time. Everyone started from somewhere. So I hope that people are inspired to do some stuff out in the community, because it's really up to everyone else, to really change things and make this city even better than it is now. So I hope that is something that happens. And also, to be frank, just to really, really expose themselves to some intelligent, beautiful Black people. I just think that that's really important for everyone to see. So I hope that those two things happen.
Charlton, can you follow up on that and maybe address it from this angle? I'm a white man. Maybe there's a Hispanic woman listening. You are two Black men. You're having conversations with other Black people. You're not excluding me from the conversation. What is it that I should be taking out of that?
Not excluding you at all, but raising the volume or making people aware, making you aware, or showing you some of the people that are in the community and some of the things that they are doing, not just for the Black community, but for the whole community in the Lowcountry, and some of the services or some of the businesses that they have, and how they got to that point, how successful they are, their thoughts. Like Marcus says, it's inspiring. If nothing else, it's inspiring for everyone in the community to hear their stories. I mean, Lonnie's 94. Mm-hmm. Lonnie was just as sharp as a tack, and to hear some of the things that he has done, some of the situations that he has been, both good and bad, some of the high points of him being in the county, policy, things like that. It's just very inspiring for us to listen and learn about. I mean, he was a teacher. He basically switched over and became this tremendous county politician that has buildings and highways and things named after him right. in town now. So, yeah. As
the host, do you guys think at all that there's a worry that, it's interviews by Black people about Black people, it doesn't include Hispanics, white people?
Well, I think if it is a racial program, then that's completely fine. It's completely fine to just focus on Black folks, If it were a podcast about yoga, you would interview yoga people, and this is a podcast about Black people, so we were interviewing them. So I don't have any concern about that.
Will there be a volume 4, we're hoping, and anybody in particular that you'd like to talk about that you're reaching out to, or is that more of a conversation that you guys have among yourself and then just reach out to them at the point you think is appropriate?
A little bit of both. I actually filmed a new episode a couple of days ago. That'll be in a future volume. And there's so many people that are in the Lowcountry that you probably have never heard of. And then when you do watch it and you say, oh, wow, I didn't know that they were a part of that, or I didn't know that they were behind that, or I didn't know that they owned this business, or I didn't know that that was their story on how they got to this point, or whatever have you. It's very educational that way, and not just for anybody that's not in the Black community. There's a lot of people in the Black community that do not know the story or history behind things like that. For example, one of the music episodes that we had is I interviewed Kellen, who is the associate conductor of the Charleston Symphony Orchestra. Most people may know Ken, that is the current conductor,
Okay.
but Kellen is this young African-American guy, and I don't know of a whole lot of people. Definitely, Black folks in this town are in kind of the minority of going to the symphony. But here you have this young man, this young brother that's out there actually traveling all over the world conducting orchestras. And probably a whole lot of people don't know him if he walked right into the room today and, hey, you're an international conductor. A lot of it is definitely educational. It's for everyone, but definitely we want to make sure that everybody understands and knows that this is raising the volume on what is happening in the Black community and how it helps us all. It definitely helps us all. Everyone.
We're talking with Charlton Singleton and Marcus Amaker. Those are the gentlemen who you will see in the interviews when you visit GilliardCenter.org and click on the Raising the Volume series, 22 episodes now. And Marcus, you talked a little bit about the educational aspect, which is such a driving force. As you go out into schools and talk with kids and things these days, it's a little different time from when you or me or Charlton was in school. Are you able to reach kids the same way? They talk about the disruption of social media, et cetera, et cetera. What is it that you can do, whether it's through poetry or whatever, that you find that is working in cutting through and reaching these kids?
I think for a lot of the things that I find that really connect with students are when they realize that they have a safe space to speak about whatever they want to, and when they realize that they have creative freedom to write about and create whatever they want. I think that in schools, at least for me, so much of my learning was memory based. So, whether it's math, or whether it's history or things like that. So when I go into a school and I'm like, all right, for the next 10 minutes, you can write about whatever you want, just use these techniques and things like that. And that I have found has really been an eye-opening experience for me, as well as for the students, because they aren't used to really creating that way. So I always give them examples of artists who have done things sort of differently, quote unquote, or unique artists or things like David Bowie, who I, in my mind, didn't have any sort of limits to what he could do. So I give them sort of examples like that. And that's when I'm able to really connect with them. The funny thing is when I first started going into classes, I got my butt kicked a bit because I would just go in and then just read and then leave, not have a lot of feedback. So I've learned a lot over the years, and I apologize to those schools that I visited in 2010. But I definitely have learned a lot, and it's all about that feedback, making sure that they know that their voice matters, but also that they have creative freedom to say and think what they want. And it's been amazing. The stuff that has come out of these students has been absolutely amazing.
So those schools you were at a decade ago, they should re-invite you back, and it'll be a different kind of program.
Please call me. Yeah. Hopefully I didn't scar them too much, but yeah, call me.
Now, let me ask you this, because this is a little fascinating to me. You talk about writing, and everyone knows you as Charleston's poet laureate, but you have a musical background.
Oh, yeah.
And Charlton, I'd love to get your take on this, the difference between writing a poem and writing a song. I have to think there's a lot of similarities, but is there a lot of difference as well?
I tend to think of them as sort of the same. I think that if you are writing a song, you're thinking about fitting whatever you are writing into a certain theme, whether it's a chord progression or things like that. So you're trying to fit whatever you can create in sort of the parameters of that song. A poem is kind of the same way. I mean, I'm always stressing the students to really think about your story first, and then, you can write that story sort of plainly. Like you could say, I have a beautiful voice. Like that's just one thing that you can say. But when you start to think about it as a poem, you can add some flourishes to it. So like, I have a beautiful, booming, blissful, and brave voice. There's just certain ways that you can make your poem a little bit more musical. So I tend to think of them as kind of the same. I now write lyrics to operas as well, and it's sort of the same thing as well. We always talk about themes, mood, things like that, and words have the same mood and energy as a trumpet solo. Like there's a lot of things that you can do, that you can compose the composition sort of the same way, if you're using words or if you're using sound.
Charlton, does that make you a poet then as well? Because you write.
Nice.
Well, it's interesting because when I talk about jazz and improvising, I actually explain it to my kids or the students that are in front of me. I explain it to them by speaking first. Just like Marcus used, I have a beautiful voice. And then he said, I have a beautiful, booming, blissful, I tell them about adding details to it. Like I usually use a story. I would say after school, I went home, I had a snack, I did my homework, I ate dinner, and then I went to bed. And then I go back and I say, after school, I went home, I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I did my math homework, then we ate dinner, I took a bubble bath, and then I went to bed. After school, I went home, I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with smooth, creamy peanut butter and grape jelly. Then I did my math homework, even though I don't like math, but it's good for me. I watched some TV, I watched SpongeBob, then we ate SpaghettiOs, and then after SpaghettiOs, I took a bubble bath, and then I put on my Batman pajamas and I went to bed. It's the same story. So then when I pick up my trumpet and I'll say, now let's translate that into playing a song or improvising. And then I'd play something that they'd know, like ya da 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 da. And then they go, okay. And then I'd say, wait a minute, we're gonna play it again. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da. And I go, wait a minute, we're gonna play it again. Da 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 da, ya da da da, ya da 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 da. And it's the same song, but we're adding more details to it. And so that's sort of the musical version of how Marcus was talking about, just taking one sentence and adding more details to that sentence can create that composition or that poem or that short story or long story, novel, or whatever have you.
Man, I wish you guys were coming to my English classroom when I was in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Would have been a whole lot more fascinating. Marcus, one other thing. Let me wrap up on this. What are you most proud of about the Raising the Volume series to this point?
I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is, honestly, it's sort of breaking down this stigma that the Gaillard Center might not be for everyone. It's almost this like imposing house. Like it's so big, and a lot of great shows happen there. And I think what has been great is being able to work with the Gaillard Center people to open up the doors, so the community, I hope, feels that that space is for them. So that's been really awesome for me, because I know when I first moved into town, being at a place like the Gaillard Center seemed like a big dream to me, but it seemed like something that wasn't for me. So I hope that the more that people watch these episodes or hear this in interview or look at Gaillard Center's website, they'll realize that that space is for them too. And I think that the outreach that they've done is really important. So that's a big part for me. I mean, as well as sort of the obvious things of helping these community members have their story be heard. But I think when I step back, I'm really proud of the fact that we are inviting people into the Gaillard Center for the very first time and putting them on that big stage. And I know that that is an important thing for me.
Charlton, anything you can add? Something that you're really proud of that has come out of this series?
Yeah, I've had a number of people, teachers, community members that have reached out to me and said, I enjoyed watching this. I didn't know that about Judge McFarlane or some of these other people, and then have gotten involved with some of the initiatives that they have mentioned. I usually try to end it off by asking if there is something that they are doing in the community now that some people probably would not know of. That's, once again, part of raising the volume so that people are aware of different programs and initiatives that are happening in the community to change, the community for the good. That's always been the best part for me. Aside from sitting down and just chit-chatting with them, which is amazing, but getting information like that is just priceless.
So we're 22 volumes in, and you have mentioned, Charlton, that you've got one in the can. So I guess, Marcus, can we say that we can look forward to a volume 4?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I am in the process now of contacting some people and making sure that we can make that happen. Yeah, there will be more.
There are currently 22 episodes of Raising the Volume. You can check them out right now. Just go to the Gaillard Center website. It's gaillardcenter.org. Check them out today. Marcus Amaker, Charleston's Poet Laureate, and Grammy Award winner Charlton Singleton, our guests today on Lowcountry Forever.
After a 2-year COVID break, the 2022 Tillman Honor Run has been set. The 4.2-mile run-walk is set for Saturday, April 23rd on Daniel Island. Mark the date today and keep listening for more information on race registration.
Thanks for listening to Lowcountry Forever. If you missed any of this week's show, there's a complete recording under the podcast link at lowcountryforever.com. Lowcountry Forever is a public affairs presentation of the Charleston Radio Group.